You are now tuned in to Let It Be the Podcast with Bree Fergie, a podcast where we discuss a variety of topics from lifestyle, faith, and the struggles of the everyday believer. This is a podcast about simply releasing control and just letting things be. I'm so glad you tuned in for the conversation, and don't worry, it's safe here. Holy Spirit, activate. Uh, What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for listening to the second episode of Let It Be the Podcast. Today, I have a very, very special guest. I have Miss J. Lanae here. She is an author, she's a writer, she's an actress, she's a speaker. She do everything. So I'm going to let her introduce herself in a second. But I just kind of wanted to follow up from our first episode. We talked about being set apart. Now, I told y'all that this is going to be a series, and I don't know how long it's going to last, but I really wanted to get a chance to for other people to share their stories about what it means to be set apart for them. And for me, what I had to learn to embrace being set apart, which basically means just walking in the identity that God gave me and being unique and accepting that and not trying to conform or not trying to change the way that he made me or be ashamed of my past or everything that's made me who I am today and how I got to this point. And so I wanted to continue that conversation. And so, Miss J. Lanae, please.
Thank you. Well, you added a title there, but maybe one day you spoke it into existence as far as acting. But I am a screenwriter, author, mom, live in Austin, Texas, originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. So, yeah, thank you for inviting me here. I'm very honored to be your actual first episode with a real person other than yourself. So, yeah, let's do it.
Yes, thank you so much. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but I'm so grateful that you joined me. And I guess just to
Yeah.
get started about how we met, you want to share the story? You want me to share the story? How we met?
I can start it. You can football catch it if I miss something, I guess. So I went to Pastor Sarah Jake's Women Evolve conference in Dallas. And I was just so set on going to this conference because if you guys have never heard her preach or heard any of her videos on YouTube, she has this thing called Hey You. I'm telling you, she will set a fire in you. And so I had read her book, decided that I was going to go to this conference, and I didn't care if I had to go alone. I just prayed, like, God, can you sit me next to somebody who's not a jerk, who can, we can connect with and they can have purpose to it. Like, so I prayed that the person I sat next to would have a purpose because you just never know. So I got there, saw you. You were sitting by yourself too. You both came along, and I think she told us to hold hands or something. And we like, we held hands to like a prayer pre-COVID. No, this was post-COVID. It was still COVID. And, we held hands. And I think after that, like in intermissions, we just started speaking. So I don't know. Then as we started talking, I just really felt the connection and that we were supposed to meet. And yeah,
Yeah, so
that's how
this
we
is
met.
right. And so I guess from my point of view, uh last year 2021 I definitely was like, listen, I'm trying to feed into, like, pour into my spirit as much as I can. I absolutely love Sarah. I've been following her for years, and when I found out that she was gonna be coming, she was doing her Woman Evolve conference, but she was in person in Dallas. I'm like, I don't care how much them tickets cost. If I
Right.
can pay however much to go to these festivals, I'm going. And so I'm
Right.
such an introvert. Like, people who know me don't believe that, but I really don't like to talk to people, if I'm
Me
being
neither.
honest.
Me
And so I told myself, like, I'm at to go in here and I'm gonna sit down and I'm not gonna talk to nobody. Don't nobody talk to me. I'm gonna get this word and I'm gonna go about my business. That was my entire plan. So I was like, okay. I sat down and I heard you were talking to our other friend, and I heard y'all talking, and I kind of like tuned it out, but there was just I don't remember what part. I wasn't like eavesdropping on your conversation, by the way, but I just heard you
hmm
talking.
hmm
I just heard y'all talking, and I could tell you had some substance. And so, when they ask you, stand up and hold hands and pray and all of that, I'm like, okay, cool. But to be honest, after that, I was like, oh, okay, nice prayer. But then I'm still gonna sit here and mind my business. So I never
Yeah.
intended to, like, because you meet people when you're out in public, and then you never talk to those people
Yeah.
again. And I don't be wanting to talk to nobody. So I
Yeah.
just
Me
didn't.
either. I'm an introvert too. So yeah,
Yes.
I can definitely. And people don't believe me either if I say I'm introverted. They be like, "What?" But And like when I'm interacting with people or I'm in a social setting, I'm not like shy and I'm not afraid of, conversing with others. But I'm just not the type of person to go to like major social events or like, clubs and just parties. I'm the type of person to be like, yeah, call me when it's over. So yeah.
Listen, that is me 100%. But I know what it was. She asked us to pray about, we had to get in a circle of 3 or 4 people. She asked us to pray about either what we were struggling with.
Mm,
I can't remember. Was it what we were struggling with, what we wanted to get out of it? What do we need to pray out of our spirit? Because I remember mine
yeah.
was like confident, like our, I don't want to say pray out of our spirits, but like,
Yeah, she asked what is something that we wanted to gain from the conference, like something that I think that we were trying to gain. And I think you said your confidence. I don't even remember what mine
you
was,
said we
so
said
I
the
hope.
same thing, and that's why.
Oh, did we? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah,
why.
yeah,
Because
exactly.
then we kind of shared in detail about what it was. Because so that conference was back in November, and that was before. I mean, I had been talking about like, oh, starting this podcast. This is something that I was sitting on for years. 'Cause like I said, like my background is in broadcast, so I just never was confident enough to do it. And so when I shared that, that was, I wanted to stop hiding and
Mm,
stop hiding the things that God had placed in my heart. And what really, really hit us off, like I haven't shared this on the podcast, but I'm writing a book. And you shared with me that you wrote a book and you shared
yeah.
your experience. And I was like, God, like, dang it. He's so intentional. You know how like when you don't want to be held
Right.
accountable for something, I'm like, God.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I instantly knew just because of the detail of, you sharing your story. And I was like, wow, like
yeah,
I was so inspired and I was immediately drawn to you. Like, dang, I know that God is
yeah.
intentional
Same.
about who he connects, the people that he connects, and like what are the odds that I would sit next to you. And yeah, and we
Yeah.
have, the same,
Girl, I felt the
desires. And
same
so
way. I
yeah,
felt the same way. I felt very drawn to like just from meeting you, I could see the hand of God like on your life because you started to explain to me about the season that you were in and just everything that you were saying. I'm like, oh my goodness, man, that sounds just like what God did to me when He sent me across the world to a place I've never been. And it was just so many similarities in our story. And one thing that I've learned is like when I go through something, or a season happens for me, that's why I'm so open, is because I felt like I was led to share my testimony with you because God was showing me that that's the season that you were in. Not necessarily like a negative thing, because not all seasons, when you tell somebody your testimony to help them, it's not because they're going through something negative, but I just felt like you just really needed some encouragement in that moment to see somebody who kind of looked like what you've been through. Because sometimes we can feel alone, like we can
right,
feel like we're isolated. Our situation is like an isolated incident. Like God just only put us in this situation. So I don't know. So if I felt like it, you just definitely needed to hear somebody who story sounded like yours, but also that accountability part because you held me accountable to some things as well. But I really just felt like there was a connection there because we were meant to kind of sharpen each other in our journeys of where we're going. So yeah.
right. She had me in tears, y'all. Like I just, it was some things that I just wasn't ready to face. And you spoke to exactly, you
Mm,
spoke to where I was. And that made me cry because, sometimes where you can be feeling like, God, like, are you still there? Like, do you
yeah,
hear me? Do
yeah,
you see me? Do you care
yeah,
about how I feel? Even if I haven't shared this publicly, like nobody really knows. Like I mean, I have like some mentors or some OGs that I like to call them that I'll speak to about certain things, but I think in that moment I just was kind of feeling like I'm tired of these cycles of like being and
yeah,
feeling so unfulfilled. And before I was looking for my purpose to be defined by whatever role I was working in, or
yeah. Mm,
and it just kind of showed me, oh, like that's something that I've learned, and that's actually what my book is about, just learning where to put, like, purpose is not tied to what you do. It's not a title,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's about how you connect with other people. It's about how you're inspiring other people and how are you, you know, spreading the gospel ultimately, because that's why believers, that's why we're here. So
yeah,
when,
yeah,
you know, the, just me hearing you talk to me, and it's something that you shared with me was like, my voice is like, I haven't found my tracking yet, and that's exactly like my track, my footing. I haven't found it yet,
Yeah.
and that's exactly where I was. And so even for me to like jump and say, okay, let's do this podcast, scared or not, because like my first episode, I'm not gonna lie, I listened back to it a few times and I'm like, girl, that voice so shaky. And you said, I know, like a million times, but I told myself, like, if you don't put it out now, you're gonna keep sitting on this like you've been doing for
Yeah.
years. And so sometimes it's okay to
Yeah.
just do things afraid. If you don't
Scared.
even understand, yeah,
Yeah.
do it
Yeah.
scared. And so
Yeah.
that's what that was. And so just going back to you speaking to me about, how you didn't know how to write no book before, you didn't know how to do that, but once you was
Sure didn't.
obedient,
Yeah.
God opened up doors for you. And as a result of your obedience. So if you don't mind, like, I really kind of, I mean, I know a little bit, but if you want to share, how did you get up to that point? Like, when did you have your first come to Jesus moment, I'll say?
Oh man. So my story is so long that I be trying to like piece it together because like that's the word that I say all the time. You said the other word. I say like all the time, and I'm really trying to be intentional about not saying it all the time. But my story is so heavy and so long that I'm trying to figure out where I can possibly start. But one thing I can say is, I was in the church. I got saved. Well, I thought I got saved, and it'll make sense later. But I thought I got saved in about 2008. Is when I started going to church. And we could talk about that transition later. But I thought I was saved, but the long story short of that was I got introduced to religion. Um, I ended up going to like a really, really religious ministry. And it's nothing bad about them. I love everybody who was there, but it was very religious, very controlling environment, a spiritual controlling environment, to where it got to a point where it was either I left this church or I left God. Like I got to that place just period. And so I had no understanding of what God's love truly looked like. And the biggest thing that I will say is because I can sit here all day and blame the church for the misinformation, but I wasn't really studying God's word for myself. So whatever somebody told me the word said, whatever the pastor preached, I believed it. But had I been in my word, I would have been able to say like, "Hey, that's not what the Bible says," and I'd have been able to like see that. But I was just so vulnerable, and I just wanted to love God, wanted to serve God. So I went through like very hard seasons, which God gave me a word while I was working for the police department back home to move to Texas. And like I said, this whole time I thought I had a relationship, but I only believed if things were good. Like when things got really, really bad in my life, I questioned whether or not God was real, whether he loved me. And I was like, there's no way, because how could you be letting me, how can you see this? You know what, God, I'm
Hmm.
sick of you just watching me suffer. Like I had these back and forth moments in my walk to where like some moments I'll be like so high on Jesus, like so high on God. And the crazy thing was, I was angry at God and myself. But when it came to talking to other people, I can get him the word, I can get him encouragement, I'll get him scripture, and I'll walk away and not believe nothing that I said. But it felt like very textbook. There was like no
Hmm.
emotional connection with what I was saying. So 2019, moved to Texas after getting a word from God to move here, and my whole world shut down. Like everything shut down. I lost my career as a police officer. I lost my friends. I lost family. And I felt like God literally tricked me and put me on like this island and locked the door and was like, well, now that I got you here, let's
Hmm.
get started, type of thing. So that made me even more angry at God. That
Hmm.
made me even more angry. And I sunk into like a really, really, really deep depression, like a very deep depression.
Okay, so much to unload there. Um, so much to unload because that's what happens when, like, I don't know, some religion. First of all, there's a difference between religion and relationship, and a lot of people,
Yeah.
they don't know that they don't know how to separate the two. And so, and
Yeah.
especially like for people, it's hard, I'll say, to be a believer in a relationship versus the religion that we're taught growing up. You
Yeah.
have to unlearn those things. And to be honest, it's that it can be a very lonely feeling, but that's the way that God works, because like he has to remove you from your environment, from your distractions, so you can say,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying he has to do that literally, because it might not take that for somebody else, right? But for
Yeah.
your case, for my cases, the same way I got to where I didn't want to move to Dallas, but that's what God
Yeah.
said do. And so, but then you think like, oh, okay, well I did what you said, and now my life back to be lit, but it was a complete
Yep.
opposite for me too.
Yep.
Like I was like,
Had a
dang, you
whole
said,
plan.
listen, I had a whole plan. Okay, I'm about to go down here. I'm about to get this money. I'm about to do this, and then like everything goes,
Yep.
and it's so easy to, and that's when you get to really know like what you're made of. What is your faith built on? Is it built on man? Is it built on sinking sand? Like what is it built on? Because if it's
And that's
built on, go ahead.
That's what I was gonna say with what you just said. Like you just said something that's very key. You said that what our faith is built on. Because I don't want people to get the misconception that once I decide to serve God, He gonna take everything from me, right? Like
Hmm.
because that's a fear of some people. Like I've met someone who was like, I really don't want to give my life to God because it's gonna require so much of me that I don't think I'm able to give.
Hmm.
I think the biggest thing for me of why I had to lose everything was I come from a struggle. So everything I had built, I carried it proudly. Like I did this.
Hmm.
Like I had the money, the cars, the vacation. So my identity was really found. And being a cop, and it's so crazy because I never saw myself. I never even realized I said this, but I had a partner, and I remember we was riding one day. We just were, just talking, having girl talking. I was like, man, if I don't have this badge or a gun, I wasn't the police. I don't know what. Like I'm nothing without this. Like, and that's how I felt. Like my identity was found in my career, was found in the amount of money I made. I didn't even tithe regularly. I gave to people sometimes, but then it was like, I give it to you, but nah, because I don't know what you're going to do with it once I give. Like I had the wrong attitude and the wrong heart. So I don't want people to get the misconception that if I serve God, He going to move me somewhere and then rob me of everything. I
Yeah.
feel like it's based on what your dependency is, like you
Hmm.
said, what your faith is built on. And that's what God had to do with me. I had to lose everything that I built. And it was like God had to, from square one, rebuild to where in everything, like I'm talking about, I've been in Texas, what, 2.5 years? I have not worked like a real job since I've been here. And I have 3 kids and went through a divorce. So it's like everything that I have to come back to God. It felt like every 3 months, like, okay, God,
Hmm.
the funds you gave me 3 months ago, yeah, they kind of gone. So I'm gonna need, you know what I'm saying, a refill. And it was frustrating me because I'm like, God, you know I'm gonna need it. So why not just give it all to me at once? But yeah, that's not everybody's battle, but it definitely was mine. And during going through it, I hated it. But
Hmm.
now I see like I'm so glad that it happened because there's nothing like more important to me than my relationship with God.
And that's so good. And it's because you know like who your source is. Because everything that's the
Yeah.
like if you gotta maintain it, you're gonna have to break yourself down. You're gonna have to work
Yep.
extra hard to maintain it. But when you really
Yeah.
have your faith in God, nothing can shake you. You might
Yeah.
rock a little bit, or I ain't gonna lie to you, but nothing can
Yeah. Yeah.
it won't break you. And that's something because like, and I felt maybe a lot of people probably can relate to this, but I got to a point to where I was like, I'm not asking God for nothing else, because as soon as I ask you for patience,
Yes.
you gonna test me in this way. As soon as I had got to
Yeah.
that point where I was like, I am not asking for anything as long as I'm good. Okay, like if I don't need
Yeah.
nothing, I'm not asking for it. If you give it to me, cool. But it is a scary thing because a lot of people can look at him and people like to refer to him, this big sky daddy, somebody in the sky that's just marking everything you do wrong in the book, and that's
Hmm.
religion. That's not the way God's love is. And so it makes it hard to want to follow him, or if
Yeah.
people who don't really have that understanding to say, like, if you're connected to somebody who maybe they don't do the same things or they have been transformed, this is like, oh, you so religious now, but I'm not religious. I just have a relationship with God, and it's changed
Yeah.
my desires. It's changed the way I've operated. So now,
Yeah.
because I know that I gave my life to him, so I have to trust him in everything. So I can't do things in my own will and
Yeah.
my own way anymore, because that's just not the way that he had. That's not the way that he is moving through me. Everybody's convictions are not the
Yeah.
same, but it is. I'm glad that you brought that up, because sometimes it can be scary, for people to even want to have that conversation, because it's like, oh, he gonna strip me. It's gonna hurt, but like, He don't
Yeah.
take nothing from you that he can't restore tenfold. He don't take
Yeah.
nothing
Yeah.
from you that trust me, like if you had to work hard to get it, like that's the best you can do. He gonna go exceedingly and abundantly. So like,
You said something about your desires change, and that's what happened to me, which led me to writing my book. Like,
okay,
I was a police officer, and I felt like I was helping people. I've had a lot of jobs. I'm not gonna say why, but I've had a lot of jobs. But policing was like my go-to because I like discipline as a kid. So like when I got into that type of environment, it just excited me. It gave me like this sense of honor. And that was what, God put on my heart. Like I remember praying for that job, like fasting, praying, all of this. So it was like I knew that God put me there. And there was a lot of trials I went through to get it. And it was crazy because when I got to Texas, God showed me a vision of what he had planned for me. And I'm not gonna lie, at the stage that I was then, I was like, that couldn't have been God. Like ain't no way like that God would have said this to me. Like I had visions of me like talking on the platform. I had, visions of me writing and producing movies. Like I just had so many different visions and God was showing me pretty much like me being a minister and I couldn't believe it. I said, there's no way because no church has ever even allowed me to serve. Like, I remember trying to serve at churches and they were like, oh, no, sorry, you can't do that. Or I remember sinning, as you can say, in churches sitting me down. That's one of the biggest things that churches do. Like, they sit you down and now you can't serve in ministry no more because of a mistake that you've made. So when I started writing my book, it was actually an accident because God gave me the word 5 years before I started and I never had the time. I'm like, I don't have the time to write a book. Like police, that's 10-hour shifts, overtime in court. I didn't have time to do that, but God made it to where I had nothing but time. And he said, I need you to focus on what I told you to do because it's going to make sense later. And I didn't know how to write a book. I'm like, God, I don't know how to write a book and I hate reading books. So why would I look like writing a book? And I probably not going to even read my own. Like, why would I write a book, God, and I'm not gonna even read it? Like it don't even make sense. So it was
mm-hmm.
crazy. And I kept fighting it. I kept fighting it like, nope, I need money, I need a job. Kept going to police department. Sorry, we can't hire you. Another like what? Go to another police department. Sorry, we can't hire you. Like, what do you mean? I'm trained with the FBI. I done trained in homicide. I know how to do like I had the stats that I felt like made me more than qualified to be a police officer, but everybody kept shutting the door in my face. And I think that my book launch and my come to Jesus moment happened at the same time because God left me with no choice and I had nothing else to do. And so I'm like, well, I can't get a police job. So now what am I supposed to do? And my friend just said, what was the last thing that God possibly told you to do that you haven't done yet?
Ooh,
And that's where you start. And I was
ooh.
like, so I sat there for a minute and I was thinking like, I was like, well, he told me 5 years ago to write a book. And I was like, okay. And he said, well, start. And I didn't know what that looked like. But it's crazy because once I started, everything else just started to just fall in place for it.
Mm-hmm. That's how. Oh,
Yeah.
that's how it always is. And to be honest, starting is the hardest part. You have to get over
Yeah.
your insecurities about your lack, thinking about like, oh, I don't know how to do this. I've never done this before. How could you use me for this? It don't make sense to you, but that's not faith. Like if God gave you a
Yeah.
word and told you to do something, He don't need you to figure it out. He needs you to be obedient. He'll give you the tools. What it say like? I don't know
Yes.
if this is in the Bible, but He doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the call. So like
Yeah.
if you could do it on your own, you won't need God. And that's one thing that
Yeah.
keeps believers humble because we have to come back to Him because He is our source. And so if we're doing
Yeah.
things in our own will, then what we need God's word for? What we need Him for?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's not the way it works. And so you have to like trust me, like it's hard sometimes especially when we'll get ahead of ourselves and think like, oh, okay, well you told me to do it this way, so it must be and I'll use myself for an example. So I knew from a young age that my voice was my gift, because like I didn't have I don't have the talent. I'm not a singer. I'm not a I
Yeah.
mean, I always knew that I could write. That was, I never looked at that as a gift though. And like just communication, that was the gift, the spiritual gift that God has given me. And just with the way that I connect with other people who are drawn to me, which is so crazy because I said before, like I am an introvert. But I was one of those people. I spoke at my high school graduation. That was the first time I ever spoke on a platform. But God told me, that's, like he gave me a glimpse of what he was going to use me for. But I never believed that. I was just like, okay, I just, anyways, when I went to college, I pursued PR. But I thought I was going to be behind the scenes, because I never wanted to be one of those people that was just like,
Yeah. In the
like,
forefront.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
No,
struggling with
me either.
confidence, struggling with confidence and all those things. So it's like, God, how can you take all of my insecurities and tell me like that's what
Yeah.
I want you to do,
Yeah.
things that I don't even feel equipped to do or know how to do, never seen it done before. How can you say like that's what my life is going to be? Like, that don't make
Yeah.
sense to me.
It
So
don't. And nothing that God says, I feel like nothing that God has told me to do in these last couple of years makes sense. But there has been, as Pastor Mike Todd say, they have made so many miracles in my life.
mhm,
And the one thing that I've learned, and ooh, and this is like, it's so good because God said this to me and it just made sense, is usually the area that the enemy attacks is directly correlated with your calling.
mhm,
Like, and I mean from the moment that you are born. So for me, I'll just say one, because we talk about insecurities when it comes to callings, but my insecurities I feel like were just a lot deeper. Like I was bullied as a kid, um, told that I was unattractive. So I'm talking about, it was so bad, I remember it, is I would walk in class and this one boy would just scream whenever he saw me and make the whole class laugh. So I was told I was unattractive. I was told I talk like a man, about the physical abuse that I went through with my stepfather. So all the things that God was going to use, because who wants to get up in front of people if they believe that they're unattractive? Who
right,
wants to get up in front of people if they're taught to hate their voice and the way that they speak? And as I grew up, I was never the person that people wanted to listen to. I was made to be silent. I was taught silence as a kid. Your parents say things like, "Don't say what goes on in my house. What goes on stay on in stay. I mean, what goes on in my house stays in my house." Things of like traumas that I was going through and things that I had to endure as a kid. I never had an outlet to speak. So I learned how to stay silent. I learned how to internalize everything that I went through, everything that I felt. I didn't speak to people because the people who I lived with didn't care. So why would I go out into the world and possibly speak to a stranger about anything if my own mother or my own father doesn't care? You get what I'm saying? So
mhm,
I learned as God took me through my wilderness season, that everything that the enemy attacked was because he knew my purpose,
mhm,
right? He knew. So it's crazy because you've heard this said so many times. God, the devil meant it but bad, but God turned it for my good. You
mhm,
heard that?
mhm,
Well, I've learned that that's not even what it says. It
mm,
says the devil meant it for bad, but God meant it for good. So God allowed him to attack my insecurities because it would be the place that I would come to him for help. God allowed him to attack certain areas of my life because God meant for it to shape me and for it to build me. So the insecurities that I had about my speaking, if I never had insecurities about my speaking, I would have never came to God and asked him how to speak. You get what I'm saying? Like I would have never came to him for direction. So I was thankful in this season for everything that I've had to endure and every insecurity in my life because I still have them. I can
mhm,
sit here all day and make people think that, oh, because you have a certain issue or a certain insecurity, that God is going to take you through this like tunnel of spirituality to where it's just going to go away. No, but my insecurities keep me coming to God.
mhm,
I can't write a script without coming to God. I'll try to write a script and go like 3 days without praying and talking to God about my script, and I'll sit there and realize how trash it is. I can't even be inspired. But
mhm,
now when I write, when I speak, I have to come to God first because I don't know what to say. Shoot, I had to pray before this. Like, God, help me to speak. Like, allow me to be comfortable that what I say can impact somebody else. Like when I write, God,
mhm,
what should I write right here? How should I do this? Because if I never was attacked in that area, I would never known the dependency I needed from God.
mhm. That's good, and that's what keeps us. like you said, it keeps us humble. It keeps us coming back. Because if he gave us everything, like if he gave you this vision, like, okay, you're gonna be a speaker, you're gonna be on these platforms, and he gave it all to you right then and there, like you wouldn't know what to do with it. You know?
Girl, I would have
It's
fumbled the bag.
listen, how
If
many
I,
yeah. You wouldn't
girl,
even
if I would
know.
have got if I would have got the vision 2 years ago, even when I thought I was ready, because
Mm-hmm.
I'll pass a test spiritually and be like, oh God, I'm ready now. Like, thank you, I got it. So now we can, let's move this train along. Like I'm ready to go where you sending me. And God kept telling me, not yet. You need to humble yourself.
Yep.
Well, God, I'm ready. I got it. I heard what you said. Like I passed that test. Like my patience good, God. I ain't got no fake people around me. No real people only. I read my word every day. I pray, but that was like the aesthetics of the outside.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing who I am on the inside, I'm humble, right? I'm not prideful like I used to be because one attitude that I had to get rid of, just being transparent, was I'm going to prove everyone who doubted me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like I thought I wasn't going to never be nothing. They treated me like crap, and now look at me. And guess what? When I get all this money, don't try to be my friend and be in my inbox, right?
Mm-hmm.
I posted myself on Instagram. Look what God doing in my life. Y'all didn't think I could be used. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and God had to humble me because that was the wrong attitude to have, right? Because those are the same people who He needs me to minister to. The
Mm-hmm.
people who God allowed to witness you struggle, the people who God allowed to attack you, were all purposeful. So you can't mistreat any of that because you might have to go back and bless somebody that cursed you along the
Mm-hmm.
way. So there was a lot of things within me that God had to humble. And if I would have got the bag back then, yeah, I would have been out here stunting. I probably would have had a nice Jeep with rose gold rims on it, which I'm probably still gonna get. But now, when I get it, I have the right motives behind it. But yeah, so like even now, I still don't know if I'm ready, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just have to stay before God's face and stay disciplined because Bree is scary.
Yes,
Like
it
it's
is.
scary at any moment for what it is that God doing in my life for me to imagine me doing it without Him.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an opportunity with a very popular television network to do one of my shows. And this is just another transparent moment. I took what God gave me and I tried to make it look like what they wanted because I just wanted the opportunity. Like I was tired of waiting. And I thank God for His mercy and His faithfulness because He could have allowed me to do that. I had the deal on the table. We were in the room, they were negotiating. And at any moment, I could have said, yeah. And I think I told you this. I said, I think God wants me to walk away from this deal. I remember calling you and calling another mutual friend that we have. And I'm like, I need y'all to pray for me because I really don't know if I'm hearing His voice. But I feel like God told me to walk. I had two deals at the time. I was like, I think God want me to walk away from both of these deals. And I was like, but you know what? I don't know. So I'm just gonna I'm just gonna take a week to see if He really said it. And so His faithfulness and just I didn't do it. I didn't walk away from it initially because I'm like, God, if I turn these two things down, I ain't got nothing. And I've been waiting for 2.5 years. And now you want me, I'm talking about one of the popular networks that all of us watch. And I'm just like, God, can you imagine this? Like, I'm in this room, God. Like, when I go in there, though, I promise I'm going to tell them about you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell them that it's only because of you that I'm here. And I just was finding all types of way to compromise. And God was just telling me, but that's not the way I need this to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not the way. It's a great opportunity, but I need you to sacrifice that for me. And He just kept showing me a vision of Abraham sacrificing Isaac. And that just was on my heart all week, like Abraham sacrificing Isaac. And as soon as Abraham went to do the sacrifice, God intervened and gave him something different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I kept continuing with the deal. I was just like, if it ain't you, God, you're going to close the door anyway. So let me just see how
See how
far
far
this
I
can
can
go,
go.
right? Let's see. Like, let me see how far I can take this. So God was like, I'm giving you every red flag and indication that this is not me. So you can continue to push and play along with this if you want to. And you're going to get it. You're going to get the meal that you're asking for. You're going to get a nice meal that you can probably eat off of for a couple weeks. But you can either eat off this meal for a couple weeks or you can sacrifice this meal and I can give you a lot of meals that's going to feed more than just you, but it's going to feed generations.
Mm.
And When I heard that, I thought about my kids. I thought about the people after me. I thought about the thumbprint that I care to leave on the world. So I got a contract from my producer to move my deal forward. And I read this deal, and in my spirit, God said, turn it down. And I turned it down. I sent the email and I just said, hey, I respectfully, I have to decline this opportunity, but I thank you for all that you've done for me. And I did the exact same thing with the other deal. And within 24 hours, another producer called me and said, I would like to represent you. And I can do A, B, C, and D. And the craziest part about it is everything that I was trying to get out of my previous representation, I was begging to get. Like, I'm talking about like trying to do everything I can. Like, I'm being more like loving and more open. Like, I'm just trying to give myself and more, but it wasn't being reciprocated, right? And I've
Mm-hmm.
learned that this person was doing what was in the best interest of them and not me. So God's mission was never going to get further in that situation. And this person literally, like when I tell you, crossed every T and dotted every I when it came to what it was that I was looking for. But the greatest thing was they put me on another journey that I'm not gonna lie, I was very frustrated. And I looked up the heavens and I didn't even say nothing. I just said, thank you, Lord. Like, okay, thank you. But I realized had I even walked in that room with this network, I wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't ready. But now the things that God is having me do is better preparing me and equipping me. And now I'm ready to do it the way that God wants me to do it. He's given me the true vision, which He's told me already, but I tried to doctor it to fit.
Manipulated, yeah.
Yeah, I tried to manipulate it a little bit to fit what it was that I wanted and the time frame that I wanted. And so now I feel that inspiration again because I didn't feel it for so long. Now I feel that like when God's spirit just overtake you and you just know, like, you can't even help but throughout your day just be like, thank you, God. Like, man, just thank, like, I have that inspiration again to where now I'm able to connect to my writing again. So, yeah, I'm super excited about that.
I love to hear that. And we can find ourselves being that way, compromising from relationships, from professionally to romantic relationships
Yeah.
to just everything. We find ourselves doing that so many times, and God will give us a red flag like, hey, this ain't it. Hey, this ain't it. Trust me, but it's so shiny. He's so cute. Oh, it's all of these things, and it's just like, nope, this ain't it. You can do it if you want to,
Yeah.
but then you're gonna, like you're gonna suffer the consequences because it looks good right now up front, but play the long
Yeah.
game. And so, thank you for sharing that because I definitely have found myself dealing with people or entertaining opportunities that God is like, hey, walk away, and then I don't do it. You prolong that, and then you end up
Yeah.
causing more damage to yourself, maybe to
Yeah.
somebody else if you just be obedient the first time. But I
Yeah.
admire your faith and your faithfulness to God because that can be hard when you have something, especially as grand of an opportunity that you had, right in your hands. Like this is something that I've always dreamt of. But I think a lot of
Hmm.
times God will be like, let me see where your heart is at.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Yeah.
Yeah, like let me see where you are. Like you
Yeah.
say you ready. Let me dangle this in front of you just to see. Like, are you gonna grab it?
Yeah.
Are you gonna compromise your morale? Are you gonna compromise? Are you gonna, like, let's just see.
Yeah, and then you try to hide because I don't know if you remember when I told you like God want me to walk away from this, and I disappeared from both of y'all for like a week because I was so mad that the confirmation was to walk away from this. And when
Mm-hmm.
y'all start speaking to me, y'all start speaking in alignment with what God was saying. And so I had went on a vacation that weekend to think like this is what God want me to do. And when I tell you, it felt like God just like locked me in this hotel room. Like it was crazy. But yeah, you run and you try to hide. And I'm telling you, I'm at this place in my life where I've spent 32 years doing things my way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've spent 32 years chasing the fame, as far as I guess what we can call social media famous, trying to go viral, doing certain things. I've chased the whole, status quo of getting the nicest car and taking the best vacations, and I never found fulfillment any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Never. Like the lust, the selfishness, just any of that. Like I spent 30 years of my life, 31 years of my life just being miserable and depressed and going through cycles and just not knowing, like, do I have a reason to be here? God, like, who am I? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
never knew who I was. I knew who people told me that I was. I knew who people molded me to be. And I felt like this puppet that was just people pleasing for pastors and just to get some type of affirmation. And just, I just found myself just in this like really tight space and hole to where I just felt like consistently, like whenever things got worse, like, God, just take me. Why am I still here? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why am I still here? You just sitting here watching this crap. So just take me, like, because I'm tired. Like, I'm tired. And I know you've gotten to that place before where you just like literally feel like the air, like you literally have no, like you got one more breath left in your lungs. Like,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
it's a like, man. So yeah, like, and now I'm in a place where I don't want to do it without God. Like, and it's not because I just wanted to be successful. I just love God so much that it's like this relationship that I've longed for my entire life, where I just love God so much that I can never imagine my life without him. Like, I can't imagine doing nothing without him because it means then it's empty. It means nothing to me. And so in everything that I do, no matter what it is, I just really want God to be with me and I want him to lead me because my life is not my own. And that's really what I live by now. So just like you said, yeah, I had the opportunity right there in my hands, but that opportunity was really going to destroy me. You know why? Because the producer was stealing my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He was taking my stuff in contracts that I wasn't even reading. I was just signing them just because
Mm-hmm.
I trusted somebody. Like, yeah, I trust you, so I'm gonna sign this piece of paperwork. And God kept giving me red flags. And when the other person would explain their way out of it, like, no, 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 that's not what it was. God was showing me, like, yes, it is. I had this gut feeling
Mm-hmm.
like I'm not supposed to be in this situation. And because of my thirstiness, as we say, I would have signed this paper and given away all of my ideas,
Mm-hmm.
given away all my stuff. And then now I got to start all the way over. So, in my thirst to be where I was trying to be, to get in this place because this door looks appealing, it looks amazing. It's like, who wouldn't? And they right mind take this opportunity. And for me, it just it's so much bigger than that. Like everything that I do is just so much bigger than that. And I really don't care who I lose along the way. I mean, I love them, but I can never compromise in the way that I used to before.
That's so good. Oh, and especially when we talk about being set apart and becoming, new, and when you surrender yourself to God, it can be a lonely feeling when you feel like you're the only one. When like the people, the circle that you're used to, the your environment, everything is just like, okay, well, I don't operate the same way anymore. So it's like, dang, who am I? Like I don't think like
Yeah,
the old me, I would have compromised. No, without without a doubt, without a second guess, like, oh, okay, yeah, you want me to do that? Oh, I can tweak that a little bit, or I can deal with you a little
yeah,
bit longer, even though I know you're not good for me in the long run, or like,
yeah.
but like, how do you stay, or what are some things that you do to stay motivated? When you do have those moments of isolation, or when you do feel lost or confused, you say like you don't want to do it without God, but can you share some things that you actually like? What are some tangible things that you do to help you stay grounded and just stay dependent on Him?
So the biggest thing is I'm a visual person. So I created like my home office, and when I sought God for vision, I sought God specifically for vision in just certain areas. So what I do is I wrote all of it down and I hung it on my wall. And it's something that I look at every single day because I remind myself of my vision. But then I had to find a regimen for what I was going to do every single day. So one of the things I do is I get up in the morning before my kids get up, and the first thing I do is literally climb out of bed and just get on my knees before God. Sometimes I don't have nothing to say. Sometimes I get there and I could be thinking about what I'm about to eat for breakfast. I'm just being transparent because it's not like I do the most perfect prayer, but I just make sure that the first thing I do is like humble myself before God. Um, I try to work out consistently, but I'm gonna be honest with you. Even when I don't feel like it, I just really try to read my word. Like I just try to open the Bible, and I'm not saying that that's like an energy tank for me, but I open the Bible. I control my time on social media because sometimes social media reminds me that it's not happening fast enough for me.
Oh, that's good.
I don't know if you ever felt the pressure of I need to post something to show people that God is still moving in my life.
Mhm.
And I've always felt that pressure because it's like, oh, I had to have my book. Well, now that the book is out and it's been a year, now we'll do. Now, what have you done for me lately? Kind of
Mhm.
like that type of feeling. And I just
Mhm.
always felt me chasing this need to show people that God is still working in my life and that I'm still somebody past that book, past
Yeah.
what he did last year. So I have to control my social media intake and I have to be honest about it. It's not about being depressed when I choose to go days without being on there, but I'm just very aware now of how I feel emotionally. And I
Mhm.
know that you asked for practical, but that's just the biggest thing for me is I'm just very aware of myself now that I can feel, well, you ain't in your word enough, or your prayers aren't intentional enough. You're not really talking to God in a way where you're vulnerable. You're not being transparent with God because you think that you thought something, and because you don't pray it, God don't know what you was just thinking or what you was just going through. So I'm just vulnerable. That's one of the biggest things that you have to do is like to stay grounded. You have to come before God and get in the habit of confessing things and just talking to God as if He already knows what you're feeling and what you're going through. And for me, that keeps me in a place of understanding that even though God knows those things, that I'm still loved by Him. I'm still
That's
loved by Him. My bad. I surround myself also with people like you and the other mutual friend that we have. Like y'all are like two of the. We might not talk every day, but when we do talk, it's like this check in of like, where are you? So there's accountability for me, and I feel like it's amazing that every now and then we can post in the group and say, I'm struggling this week. I'm dealing with this. I'm dealing with that. And then y'all just reach out sometimes and be like, hey, how's it still going? Like, you've done it for me like twice. And it'll just remind me. But you have to just constantly just remind yourself of your why. Like, that's the practical thing for me is seeing my family struggle, seeing my grandmother still in her nursing home. Every single time that I want to give up, I think about the promise that God gave me to break generational curses, to restore generational wealth. And when I think about if you give up, that's going to trickle down to them. Like they're
mm,
going to suffer because
yeah.
you gave up.
That's so
Right. And
good.
so I press on because every day that I choose to sit in my depression, every day that I choose to sit in my fear, my insecurities, and even my mess ups is another day that my grandma is still in her nursing home. Is another day that my children are, we in a two-bedroom apartment. I have three kids. Is another day that my children have to sleep in a triple bunk bed in the other bedroom. It's another day that I have to get in my bootleg van. I call her Betsy and drive and do Amazon routes to just make some sort of income. It's another day of me having to do that, right? So remembering my why, remembering that what I'm doing is not about me, because
Mhm.
if I make it about me, then I'll make decisions that make me feel good.
Mhm.
I'll make decisions that make me look good. But I have to take me out of it, which is why I don't post my stuff on social media because I just really want to live my life in private. I've done the whole spectacle thing. So remembering the people who depended on me getting it right and the people who supported me this far, I know that me giving up, me sitting here being sad in myself, me being, oh, you so insecure, Janita, like you don't like this about yourself, or you don't like that about yourself. And God said, I know what you're insecure about. That's why I'm here. Like, that's my point of being here. I know that you're scared. I know that you're afraid. I know those things, but that's the reason why I'm here. Those things are to remind you of me. So I have to continue to remember why. And just real quick, I remember a day where I was ready to just give up. I had an anxiety attack just sitting at my desk working on this script because I just wanted it to be right. I wanted to be perfect because I'm like, this could be my moment. And if I fail, if I don't get this script the way that it's supposed to be, then my grandma might pass away before it gets picked up. Like I just had all these different things just running in my mind. I remember getting under my computer desk and I'm just breaking down crying, like breaking down crying. And my daughter runs in the room and she's like, Mom, what's wrong? So then she runs and gets some tissue for me and she brings it back. Then my son comes in and he's like, Mom, what's wrong? And I tell him, like, I'm afraid I don't think it's going to be good enough and I can't do this. And my son looked at me and said, Mom, you can do this. And he got down with me and said, Mom, you can do this. And if you think it's good enough, then it's good enough. Be who you are when you write. Don't care about what nobody think. And it just, and then my other son came and he just hugged me. And so sitting there underneath my desk with my three kids in my arm and hearing what my son said, I just felt like, man, I could write a million shows right now. Like,
Wow.
and he reminded me, who cares if they think it's good enough?
Hmm.
If God says it's good enough, if you feel like it's good enough, you just do the best that you can. And girl, I got up and I finished that script, I think, in like 2 hours. Like, I just was going. And so that's my why, because my kids see me fighting. My kids need to know what a fight looks like. They
Ooh.
need to know what faith looks like. And so I have to model that for them because they're not going to learn from the world. The world isn't going to teach them that. They're not going to teach them what purpose looks like.
Mm.
They're not going to teach them what dependency on God looks like. But when my kids get older, they can look back and say, my mama fought for her dream. I saw her struggle and go without. She could have easily went and did this, but she chose to follow God.
Ooh.
And that's how they're going to learn what following God looks like, through me.
Wow. Jay, you said a whole lot there. Oh wow. You said a whole lot. Wow. And that's like being, I think a lot about like now, since a lot of us have unlearned things from our past and, wanting to break these
Hmm.
generational curses, and just for your kids to be able to see their mom model faith. That's what we wish that we had, right? Growing up. And so the
Yeah,
fact that you're
yeah,
able to do that, this is how generational curses are broken. Because I was going to ask you, like, how do you stay faithful in God's word, like in this time of uncertainty? How do you stay faithful to God when He told you something, but it don't look like it? But your obedience, your dependency on God, that's how you stay faithful, because you know it don't come from you. And like you said, you wanted to, thinking about the generations to come behind it, because had you compromised, your kids wouldn't see you really dependent on God
yeah,
and weren't, like they wouldn't see that. So, because then it would be all on you. So
yeah,
I'm so grateful that you share this. I really believe somebody needed to hear that. Like, don't
yeah,
compromise. Trust God, even
yeah,
though it doesn't look like maybe what He said. Even if you're in the wilderness right now, you're going through something. Like, God, if He said
yeah,
it, then then believe it. It
yeah.
ain't your job to worry about the when, the how, if He said it,
And
believe it.
you
Yeah.
said something about when you're uncertain, because it's easy to say like I just model this just amazing view of faith, right?
Mhm.
But there are times where my faith in my situation may be shaky, but my
Mhm.
faith in who God is never changes.
Right.
And I've never had that before. Because your faith in God should never be conditional. It, and when you have doubt and what it is that God told you to do, people need to know that that's okay,
Mhm.
because God is not moved by your emotion.
Mhm.
So because you don't feel it, or because you don't see it, or because it comes a moment where doubt creeps in, I remember being religious. I used to get this fear like, well, man, God, now He not gonna do it because I
You
don't
doubt
believe
it.
with everything
Yeah.
in me. Yeah, but
Mhm.
that's not what God means by faith. God wants us to continue to believe in Him and who He says that He is, no matter our situation. So my foundation is not built in my situation, because if I was to say, oh, I believe that God's going to do my purpose, even when it looks bad, then I'm still believing in the situation,
Mm.
right? I'm still believing in what God is doing. But my faith need to be consistent and grounded in, I know that God loves me. Like when I tell you without a shadow of a doubt, I don't care what I do wrong, and I'm not condoning sin, but I know that God loves me. I know that He loves me. And I know in His word, one of the scriptures I stand on is, I know the thoughts that I have for you. This is one of the scriptures I have it written on my bathroom mirror that I had to remind myself of every day. Like when hardship comes, when pain comes, for I know the thoughts that I have for you, thoughts of good and not of evil, to give you a hope in the future. So when evil came, I was like, well, this ain't really evil. It's just my perception. Because God said his plans for me are good. And His plans are to give me a hope in the future. So even when bad comes, even when trials come, it's not really evil. I just look at it like that. So when I don't have the money to pay my bills next month, I'm looking at it like, oh, I'm struggling financially, right? We say that. Like, I don't know how I'm about to pay this bill. I don't know how I'm about to do this. Like, I just ain't got no money. Well, I have such a faith that my faith is in God to know that His plans are always to prosper me. That if I don't got it today, well, we just about to watch what God gonna do before the first. Like he
Mhm.
gonna do something because he know I need it. So now I have this peace about my life to where when I have a need, I can step back. So my frustration spiritually no longer comes from what's not happening in front of me. Sometimes my frustration comes from what God has to take me through. And I'm just like, okay, God, listen, I thought I learned this lesson in chapter 2, um, you know, verse 6. Like I thought I learned this already. But then I've learned, like, I thought when I heard the message on pride, and it's so funny, I was listening to Pastor Mike Todd when he was preaching last year. And one of the message, every message, I was tuned in, like, yeah, let me get my pencil paper because God's talking to me. God told me to watch this. So I know that he got something to say to me. But girl, the week that he preached pride, I sat back like, dang, who acting like that? Like, yeah, they crazy.
Mm.
Like, they so prideful. So I'm just like, yeah, God, like, thanks for teaching me this. I need to send this to somebody because I think I know a couple people that need this, right? Missed the whole message.
Mhm.
And that Saturday, I'm in my room crying, my eyes out, balled up on the floor because God showed me how prideful I was. And I had this highlight reel of all my prideful moments. And so everything that I'm going through, I could have looked at it as bad. Even me crying on that floor, I was like, God, you know what? You can't use me. Just pick somebody else. Because look, I told you not to pick me in the first place. Like I was so just depressed about what God revealed to me about myself. Anytime that God revealed to me something about myself, because I just felt like I wanted to be so perfect for Him. Like,
Mhm.
I want to get everything right for you, God. You've done everything for me. Like, I just want to get everything right for you. Like, I want to make you proud. And it's kind of like that parent where you feel like if you let them down, you think about it for like days and hours. Like, so letting God down was just such a catastrophe for me. And so it's just like now my faith is just not moved. It's just not moved. There's nothing that nobody can say to convince me that God's not real anymore. Like my situation doesn't convince me that God not real no more. I know if it's happening, it's either happening to further me or it's happening to teach me. So I need to see God to figure out what it is He's saying through this lesson, so I don't have to go through it again. And so that's where even when hardship comes, what is God trying to teach me? God's trying to humble me. What is God trying to teach me here? So that's my method now.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Jay. I definitely I have to have you back on the podcast. I hope that you would join me again.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
thank you for sharing your story, just and walking in like the path that God has for you, no matter what it looks like to you right now. Like you're on a journey. That means it's not the end,
Yeah,
you know. So no matter how
yeah,
many doors might shut, no matter how many times God might say, okay, I needed you to do that in this season, but now I need you to switch gears for a little bit. You know, like we still know
yeah.
I still that the plan that I have for you is set in stone already. But I need you to take this, you know, I need you to learn over here for a little bit. So I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your transparency. And I definitely would love to have you back on the show. Um,
Anytime.
before we go, I do have a question. Like, so I'm building this playlist of things, you know, like that of songs that inspire me. Maybe when I'm feeling like defeated, broke down, ugly. Maybe I'm
Hmm.
like insecure this day, or maybe I'm forgetting what God said about me, or maybe I just don't feel good. So I have a playlist of songs that I've put together, and I'm curious. Like, do you have any songs that you like? Hop up out the bed and like, okay, let me turn my swag on today. Let me listen to this song. Let me
Yeah.
feel my spirit. Like, do you have any
Yeah.
songs that you can share with us that I can add to the playlist?
So I got four for you, but I can give you one if you only want one.
Give me all of them.
So one of the biggest ones, I don't know if it's by Naomi Rain specifically or if it's a Maverick City song, but it's called "The Story I'll Tell."
Oh, girl.
I know that.
Yes, I
I
know
know
that
she
song.
sings that song. That's one of them. It's another one by Life Church Worship called "As You Are." Like I'm talking about, like that song be having me just in tears immediately. Another one that's kind of more upbeat, but it's like it just hits me
Hmm.
is it's by Carrington Gaines. It's called Joy. I don't know if you ever heard that one
Mm-mm.
before. And the other one is Weather by Bethel Music and Dante Bowe. I know Dante Bowe is on it
Yeah.
with that one. But yeah, those are some good ones. And then sometimes when I just want to sit and just like it sounds so weird, but like fall in love with God because like have an intimate moment with God. I'll say that
Hmm.
when I want to have like just an intimate moment to where I just think on how much I love God. It's this artist called Mark Barlow, and the song is called Kindness. and it's so romantic. Like it's a romantic song that sometimes I just put on, and I think you'll love it, especially because you got a guitar behind you. So I think it's your type of vibe. But um, that's my thing. So Mark Barlow is called Kindness, but all his music, it's like really romantic, not jazz, but like it's like there's just different type of vibes where I just sit with God and just be just in awe of just yeah. So
Okay.
definitely, those are some I would suggest.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna ask you to send those to me once we done with this. I'm gonna ask you to send them so I can
I
listen and
got
I can
you.
add them to the playlist. But
I got
any
you.
last thoughts? Any last thoughts that you want to share with the people listening
Um,
about walking and your uniqueness and just embracing being set apart from the world?
Yeah, I will say keep going. God isolates you to prepare you. Isolation is usually to prepare you, but one of the biggest things that God has to do in preparation is isolate you so that his voice is the only voice that you hear for a while. We have friends that we're used to going to for advice. We have coworkers that we're used to gossiping with. And sometimes, mostly all the time, that God isolates you is he wants to make sure that you hear his specific and clear instructions for what he needs from you. And if you're in a season to where you feel like you are being obedient and you just can't hear God, it's not because you're doing something wrong. God is testing you to see if you'll stay consistent, if you will continue to seek his face. There was a whole 6 month period where I felt like God just didn't say absolutely nothing. And I'm like, I'm praying, I'm reading my word, I'm fasting, I'm trusting I'm going to hear from you. So even if you don't hear from God, you just have to keep coming back. It's him building a discipline to see if you'll keep coming, if you'll keep pressing, if you'll keep seeking. And I guarantee you that he will speak. So yeah, that's it. Just keep going. Like don't everything in your life is intentional. God designed it specifically. Everything I'm talking about from the grocery store that you go to. Everywhere I go, I expect to either hear from God or give somebody the word. And or give not even the word, give somebody a message. Somebody might just need to hear that they look cute today because they've been struggling with their insecurities all week. So wherever it is, I just go looking to give God or to receive from God, and everything has a purpose behind it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Jay. Where can people find you?
I have Instagram. It's J Lanae. I am J dot Lanae. I did change. I am J dot Lanae, and my website is also iamjlanae.com. And if anybody wants to see anything about my book or my mission or my ministry, I have a lot of it there. Towards the bottom, you'll kind of see what I stand behind. We didn't touch on any of that today, but I
We
am an
will.
advocate for. I'm an advocate for childhood abuse and trauma. So yeah, if you go on my website, you can see where how to order my book. But you can also just kind of see the trailer to the book, which I'm developing into a TV series. So yeah, either Instagram or my website. I'm not really much on Facebook.
Okay, spell it out for me, just because you spell Jay a little different.
Okay, I am JAI dot Lanae LANAE. And if you go to my website, it's the same thing without the dot. So I am JLanae.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jay. I really enjoyed this conversation. And we definitely are going to have you on the podcast again. Like, there's so much, girl. Like, there's so much that we can pull from
Girl,
you.
we ain't even
So,
go 25% into my
listen,
story. Like we
I
like
know.
2%.
I know. But I definitely believe that somebody needed to hear the words that you shared. So
Yeah,
I don't take moments like this for granted. And especially like being on a platform, I really want to be intentional about the people that I attach to the platform. Just because
yeah.
this is a God thing, it's not a me thing. Because if it was up to me, I wouldn't do it. So I
Woo,
definitely,
that's a word right there.
I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for you. Thank you for your transparency, and we're gonna have you back on the show again.
Can't wait.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining and listening to this episode. I hope that you were inspired, and I hope that you take that word and keep going. Like she said, just you're journeying through life. Everything that you go through is intentional, and so don't let your current circumstances defeat you. Like, don't let it cast out. Don't let it shame you from wanting to continue to pursue what God said about you, because it doesn't look like it. So I just
Yeah.
hope that you are encouraged and you keep going, and stay tuned. We have a lot more to come soon. Y'all, tell me that wasn't a bomb episode. That conversation, like I listened to this back myself like probably 3 times already. This is definitely an episode that you're gonna have to run it back a few more times. There was so many gems that Jay dropped in this episode just about really having blind obedience, like trusting God when it doesn't make sense, when you know what you thought it was gonna be. If you listen to him, it turned out to be the complete opposite, but he still turned it out and made it work for your good. Like this episode is a gem, and I hope that this is one that you hold near and dear to your heart. Just listening to her story and her testimony, like what I love about this conversation is that it's not one of those, hey y'all, look at me, I'm at the end of my rainbow already, and it's all the glitter and the gold and everything. Like Jay is literally, she's still in the process of journeying through, so I thank her for sharing, for being so transparent and sharing her journey of what it looks like, while she's walking through God's promise. And because a lot of us, are there too. We might not be where we want to be. We might be in the middle of it. We might be beginning, but I really, really appreciate her transparency and her honesty. This was a super long episode, and I thought about like splitting it in half, but I didn't want to make y'all wait that long. In the meantime, if you like what you heard, make sure you are tuned in to Let It Be the Podcast on Instagram, and it is at Let It Be Podcast. You can just stay up to date. I'll be posting some clips and just funnies, just staying engaged with us. And also subscribe to Spotify. You can subscribe to Apple. We're also on Google, and we're on iHeartRadio. So wherever you're listening to the podcast, just make sure that you're tuned in so you don't miss the next episode. But in the meantime, in between time, for real, run this episode back so you can listen again, maybe take some more notes, send it to somebody that you think could benefit from it. Make sure that you are subscribed, and I will see y'all next time. Well, not see y'all, but like talk to y'all next time. Bye.